Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. For filmmakers by filmmakers, the Orlando Film Festival story. I'm Kendra Hazen, and I am the Assistant Curator of Education here at the History Center. And I'd like to welcome everyone joining us here in person and everyone joining us in the live webinar. I'll make sure to leave some time at the end for questions, and for those joining us online, feel free to leave questions and comments in the chat, and Cheyenne can relay those to me. At the end of this month, the Orlando Film Festival will host its 18th annual festival at the CMX Cinemas Plaza Cafe 12. The Orlando Film Festival has become a favorite of filmmakers, presenting around 40 awards and offering industry panels and workshops over an immersive 8-day festival. In my talk today, I'll be starting with a brief historical overview of the film industry in Florida and film festivals to place the story of the Orlando Film Festival in context with the greater timeline of film festivals in Florida. Then I'll be sharing about the Orlando Film Festival's origins, their growth over time, and their impact. Lastly, I'll be sharing how you can get your own tickets to explore, enjoy, and support this year's festival. The common narrative of Florida at the onset of the 20th century is the story of Ybor and cigars in Tampa, and the trio of Henrys, Sanford, Flagler, and Plant, paving the way from citrus, cattle, steamboats, railroads in the 1880s to tin can tourism and a major land boom in the 1920s. Yet film enthusiasts and film historians know another facet of the Florida story that unfolded during the turn of that century. Florida's love affair with filmmaking is said to begin all the way back in 1898 with the Spanish-American War newsreels. This one is called the U.S. Cavalry Supplies Unloading at Tampa, Florida, and it was filmed by William Paley on May 1st, 1898. It's copyrighted by Thomas Edison as part of the Edison Films War Extra catalog, and you can find those on the Library of Congress archives. This is a film shot of troopers pulling an ambulance from a flat car that was one of 30 cars carrying baggage and ambulance supplies for the 9th U.S. Cavalry. And thus, our film story begins. As the 20th century officially dawned, it wasn't actually Tampa, but Jacksonville that was Hollywood's biggest rival for glitz, glamour, and for drawing film production companies into the Sunshine State. Florida's warm weather, our luxury destinations like the Hotel Ponce de Leon, our location on the railroad lines, and being a very happy distance from the domineering motion pictures patents company in New York City made Jacksonville an ideal location for budding production companies. For the first 20-ish years of the new century, Jacksonville was actually known as the winter film capital of the world and housed some 30 silent film companies. Folks like Oliver Hardy worked out of studios in Jacksonville. Unfortunately, local residents, religious leaders, and politicians alike eventually ran the industry out of town. And to be fair, there are a few dramatic stories of production crews mistreating the industry's welcome in the city. But by the 1917 mayoral election loss of pro-film industry Mayor Jet Bowden, Los Angeles was looking like a much friendlier option for filmmakers. My personal favorite story of the Jacksonville film industry takes place at the tail end of that era, when Richard Norman built Norman Studios. Norman, who was white, wanted to change how the black community was portrayed in film. So he created Norman Studios to produce silent movies starring black actors and usually with an all-black cast. He made many such films, including The Flying Ace, between 1920 and 1928. Not only was Norman using film to share untold stories and unseen perspectives, but his studios kept the motion picture industry in Florida just a smidge longer. Now, the Norman Studios Silent Film Museum was actually established in 2007 and is currently working on preserving and promoting its own history. You can find them on normanstudios.org and on Facebook and YouTube if you're interested in more information about them. So fast forward to the early 40s during World War II, and Florida was an ideal location for filming wartime classics like Air Force and like A Guy Named Joe. Florida already had multiple military installations. Our beaches and subtropical plants could easily be passed off as Pacific islands, and although German submarines did harass our Atlantic coast, Florida bases were way out of range for any attacks from the Japanese front. So the government actually opened up our military bases to filmmakers in hopes that these films would boost morale and strengthen support for the war. Now, we are in Florida, therefore I cannot not mention this one. So post-war production brought new filming technologies to the industry, like CinemaScope and 3D films. And in 1954, Universal Studios filmed Creature from the Black Lagoon at Wakulla Springs, a full 3 decades before they built their theme park and their studios here. During the 50s and 60s, Miami was on the hot spot, was the rising hot spot for the film and television industry. And while they were on the rise, bringing us classics like Hole in the Head and favorites like The Bellboy, Flipper, Goldfinger, and Clambake, Winter Park was actually working its way into and then out of the film era as well. In the early 1950s, Empire Studios and Avalon Film Productions worked to establish Orlando as a cheaper location to film rather than LA or Miami. During the 1950s, the story of film in Orlando predominantly revolves around the stories of English-born filmmaker R. John Hugh and his Empire Studios, and Wilbur and Thomas Casey and their studio, which was initially Avalon Film Productions. Both established themselves for a time in the B-movie industry. Not the B-movie, as in the Jerry Seinfeld cartoon, but B-movies. So these movies were the second feature of a double feature, much like the B-side of a record or a cassette tape. And for a time, Winter Park became known as the grade B movie capital of the world, until the double feature died. So, luring film projects away from California and to the Orlando area posed a few difficult problems. Orlando didn't have studios large enough or enough equipment to be attractive. However, as the Caseys tried kind of a field of dreams, if you build it, they will come approach, unfortunately, it didn't work for them. In trying to build multiple studios, their building endeavors did not survive the 1960s. On the other hand, R. John Hughes and his studio did survive. Now, he had high hopes of turning Orlando into Hollywood East, but that also never came to be. Hugh and independent filmmakers in Central Florida would continue to struggle into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, because although the climate was, and is, great for film, Florida lacked infrastructure and facilities, especially post-production facilities, that would attract directors and projects, and then keep them in Florida for the duration of the project. Getting a loan for working on film projects in Florida was actually also difficult, because banks didn't have reliable data for if a project would succeed or not. UCF professor David Morton actually writes about this in his upcoming book, and he says that most film and television shows made in Florida in the 80s and 90s were financed from out-of-state and even out-of-country investors who hired their own crews and brought them in from out of state. So although Hughes spent his career paving the way for a Hollywood East that never came to be, he and his contemporaries nonetheless laid the groundwork for Disney MGM and Universal Studios. The Disney MGM and Universal race for production, and while that was happening in the 80s and 90s, the Orlando metro area was busy playing host. During the 80s, the Orlando metro area hosted 39 feature-length films that were shot from 81 to 89, and that spent on average about $70 million during their time filming in Central Florida. And in spite of an abundance of cooperation between producers, city leaders, state legislators, multiple governors, and multiple mayors, as you know, those sound stages closed in the early 2000s. Now, the history of film festivals, although a bit younger than the overall film history, is also full of plenty of stories. The first film festival was founded in Venice in 1932 by Giuseppe Volpi, who was a member of the National Fascist Party. And in its inaugural year, they actually opened the festival with a showing of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the 1931 film by American director Ruben Mamoulian. Intending to be a biannual event, the next festival wasn't held until 1934. In 1934, Venice introduced the competitive aspect of film festivals, and 19 countries participated, many looking to win the Coppa Mussolini. During the 1930s, Italians spent tons of their expendable cash on viewing films, which happened to be American films, and so the government took quite an interest in the film industry in order to create films of their own celebrating Italian culture. Film festivals grabbed people's attention and government's attention all across the world as being hubs for showcasing their culture. And that idea quickly proliferated, producing festivals in Paris, like the Cannes Film Festival, that officially began in 1939, and then later in Berlin, and Moscow, London, Toronto, and eventually the United States. In the States, our first festival was the Sundance Festival, which officially began in 1978 as a product of Robert Redford, his company Wildwood Enterprises, in a partnership with the Utah Film Commission. Reynolds, as actor/director, knew the pains of spending time making and then distributing a film that in the end would not actually make any money. So his goal was for Sundance to showcase American-made films, and much like our very own Orlando Film Festival, to show the potential of independent films and to encourage the industry to consider filming and working in Utah, maybe even specifically on the land that he had purchased in Utah. After Sundance, film festivals began popping up across the United States, including Florida. Only 7 years after Sundance's first festival, the first film festival to take place in Florida was the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival. That's a busy sentence. And I was curious to compare the Orlando Film Festival's initial year with others across the state, so I took the start dates from the Film Freeway website, which is basically like Facebook for film festivals. And I created the graph that you're looking at here. And as you can see, the Florida Film Festival began in 1991. It takes place in Maitland. And the Orlando Film Festival, which I marked in orange and with a star, fits snugly in the middle of this timeline. It was one of 3 to begin in 2005. Over a 42-year period, from 1978, when Sundance first ran its festival, to 2020, the number of film festivals in the U.S. has grown to just over 1,000 film festivals, according to filmfestivaldatabase.com. In 2020, 208 of those were in California, 125 were in New York, 55 were in Texas, and 54 were in Florida. There were 8 in Orlando in 2020. One of those 8 was the seasoned Florida Film Festival that takes place in Maitland, and the other was our very own Orlando Film Festival on its 15th year during that 2020 season. And during that 2020 season, they were facing the pandemic, and like the rest of us, had to reinvent what was happening in their festival. So let's back up to 2004, Orlando, and the first inklings of the Orlando Film Festival. During this time, downtown was undergoing community redevelopment. Mayor Buddy Dyer announced plans to work with UCF on their film and digital media school at the Expo Center, formed an Orlando Performing Arts Planning Board, and took steps to initiate the construction of the current Plaza Cinema Cafe, which is located just a few blocks from here on Orange Avenue. In 2004, the Orlando Sentinel first chirped about an up-and-coming idea for an Orlando Film Festival hosted in the new 12-screen movie theater complex that was in the works. This new film festival was being dreamed up by lawyer Kurt Bauerl, film producer Brett Jaffe, downtown developers Cameron Kuhn and Picton Morlow. By 2005, Roger Chapin, which we're actually in the Chapin Gallery named after his mom, had also joined the team of organizers. The Florida Film Festival had already been running for about 13 years at that time and held its annual event in Maitland in the spring. So the organizers' goal was to create a film festival that was different, and that was entirely Orlando's, that took place entirely downtown, and supported and promoted culture and arts in downtown Orlando through the medium of film. They were also adamant that the Orlando Film Festival was interested in being a support and not competition for the Florida Film Festival. Not only did the two festivals partner occasionally, but in Orlando Film Festival's infancy, they also planned a few outside events. And from its conception, the Orlando Film Festival takes place in the fall as the 6-month counterpart to the Florida Film Festival. So for those of you who were downtown in Orlando during the early 2000s, you already know that the planned multi-purpose plaza on Orange did not open until much later than was originally planned. For the Orlando Film Festival, that meant being innovative with different venues. Until the Plaza Cinema Cafe actually opened, they had to find alternative venues, which included the Plaza Theater on Bumby, the Lake Eola Band Shell, UCF's downtown campus, and the previous space for Downtown Media Arts Center, the City Arts Factory on Orange, and the Downtown Auditorium on West Pine, just to name a few. The first full Orlando Film Festival opened on Thursday, October 12, 2006, with 5 features and an assortment of family-friendly shorts. Admission to watch the shorts was free, but screening the features was $5. They had an opening night reception, and they screened the movie Off the Black, which starred Nick Nolte and Trevor Morgan, both of whom attended the screening. And the 5 feature films that premiered at that Orlando Film Festival were Off the Black, The War Tapes, Candy, Tideland, and The Cassidy Kids. And although that festival was thinly attended, it was officially up and running. Now, just 1 year later, the Orlando Film Festival went from screening 5 to screening 19 full-length feature films from November 8th to November 11th, all with free admission. The intention was that free admission would help to draw in film lovers and to grow the festival's base of attendees. The festival also included 5 shorts programs and took place at the City Arts Factory and the gallery at Avalon Island, because again, as most of you know, the Plaza Multiplex was still not done. There were some important attendees during the 2007 festival. Sure, there were some celebrities like D.B. Sweeney from The Cutting Edge, there to promote his film 2 Tickets to Paradise, actor Joe Pantoliano and director Joseph Greco showing off and doing a Q&A for their film Canvas. But also amongst that 2007 pool of contributing filmmakers was the Orlando Film Festival's current executive director, Daniel Springen. Springen actually entered his film that year and won that year's Best Picture award. So as the Orlando Film Festival and the Plaza were still in the literal building process from 2007 to 2009, some crucial changes took place. The original downtown developer, Cameron Kuhn, left the Plaza building project during that time, and in 2008, the RP Plaza property took on the construction project. Now, City Council debated the plans for that builder change and the cost of the project in the December of 2008, and in the end, the City Council agreed to a contract with RP Plaza property in charge of construction and a newly established Orlando Movie Company in charge of operations. It was quite a pricey debate as well. They allotted a $3.5 million grant to be distributed in annual installments over 10 years and 2 loans totaling $6 million. The then CFO, Rebecca Sutton, contributed to an Orlando Sentinel article assuring Orlandoans that safeguards were built into the contract to ensure that the project would be completed. Part of that same contract between the city and the new venue also included an agreement about hosting the Orlando Film Festival. The Orlando Film Festival clause says that the plaza will offer to serve as the home of the Orlando Film Festival and will make the use of at least one screen once per quarter available to the festival for various events throughout the year, and ensure the festival has the exclusive use of 2 screens during the annual festival. They certainly lived up to that and more. Now, Orlando finally opened the Plaza Cinema Cafe with a kickoff celebration and ribbon cutting with Mayor Buddy Dyer and others in May of 2009. That same year, 4 years into their festival, the Orlando Film Festival organizers brought on Daniel Springen as their new executive director. So as the 2009 festival kicked off, not only did it open up with a new leader at the helm, but they finally got to welcome filmmakers into the doors of their new permanent location, the Plaza Cinema Cafe. The 2009 festival ran from November 4th to the 8th and screened films in not 2, but 4 of their theaters for free. Now, Springen also brought with him his experience, his connections, and his passion for filmmaking to this festival. In speaking with him about how he became the executive director of the festival, he actually said that he didn't know anything about running the festival when he was brought on, but he knew how to run a film. He compared filmmakers to an army because they're on time and they understand and respect how the chain of command works on a film. So he decided to run the festival like a film. And from its inception, the festival has always had an educational aspect to it. Springen himself graduated with his AS in film from Valencia Community College in 2000 and has produced multiple films through their motion picture program. As a filmmaker, he understands what his budding filmmaker contributors need in a festival, and in general, what they need to support their craft and to grow their skills. Under his watch, the educational aspect of the festival has grown from workshops into a concept to completion series of educational sessions. Until 2017, the festival included workshops on pre-production, production, post-production, with local producers, screenwriters, and actors. It filmed screens in 6 of the theater's auditoriums and typically took place over the course of 5 days. In 2017, however, that changed. In talks with the Plaza Theater about using even more screens, the Plaza ended up being willing to extend the dates of the festival to 8 days. And with that, the Orlando Film Festival team revamped their education plan. Their workshop lineup still follows a pattern of concept to completion sessions, but now includes sessions on writing, production, directing, editing, post-production, and distribution. Those sessions take place for an hour and a half in the morning of each day of the festival, and in 2017, their educational opportunities even included a session with Mark Shapiro from Leica Studios, which is the animation company known for Coraline and Box Trolls and Kubo and the Two Strings. It included a presentation by Shorts TV on the anatomy of an Oscar-winning short, and it included a workshop series called, a 3-day workshop series called Pitch to the Pros. That particular workshop starts off with learning how to make and refine a pitch and culminates with select individuals actually giving their pitch to folks from different studios and to different distribution officials and directors. The workshop coordinators select the winner for the Best Pitch Award, and those Pitch to Pros workshops not only help filmmakers make connections they need with one another, but also with leaders in the industry while refining their skills. Speaking of the value of connections, Springen brought some important connections with him to the festival as he became the director. He brought in his former Valencia professor and Florida film legend Ralph Clemente. He brought in Mo Fowler, who is also a Valencia connection and is still the event's producer, and many more. Now, to back up a smidge, I'm positive that film history folks in Central Florida already know that Valencia Community College has a long history in film. But for folks new to the story, even Spielberg talked about Valencia back in 1989. Apparently, Spielberg was on the Today Show in '89 and mentioned that Valencia Community College in Orlando, Florida had, quote, one of the most innovative film schools in the country. Now, the innovative program that he was praising was actually built by Ralph Clemente. Clemente was born in 1943 in Germany to a family in show business. By 14, he was living in Sarasota with his family, eventually got his SAG card when in Miami, and did film and movie productions and TV productions in Germany in his 20s. His first theatrical short won 7 international film awards, and he eventually got a job teaching production at the University of Miami. Now, while there, he produced Ceasefire, starring Don Johnson, that one's difficult, and in that production, he used his students on the project to mix his students with industry professionals. In the late 80s, Valencia was looking for someone to head and develop their new film program and made Clemente one of those offers that you can't say no to. So before Valencia even had a building for him, Clemente was in Orlando teaching Valencia students out of a double wide and on MGM and sometimes Universal properties. Clemente's first year to teach in an actual building at Valencia actually happens to be the first year that Springen was a part of the program. Clemente is known to have built bridges with every other film entity in Florida. He's known for aspiring to make his pictures with Florida settings, with Florida writers and actors, and he was determined to get his students working with industry professionals. So joining the Orlando Film Festival was certainly a natural fit for him and for the Valencia Film Program. In fact, Valencia is still a major sponsor of the Orlando Film Festival. They sponsor 3 prizes, which includes a $500,000 first look deal, a $500,000 first look deal with Valencia Pictures, and a $50,000 first look deal with Valencia Pictures for film shorts. The value is all in time and not in cash, but it is irreplaceable for up-and-coming filmmakers and new filmmakers. Also, many of the volunteers who are called ambassadors are also Valencia students. Some are from UCF and some are from Full Sail, but the majority of the ambassadors at the festival are Valencia film students. After working with the Orlando Film Festival for 6 years and at the age of 72, Clemente passed away in April of 2015 as a result of pancreatic cancer. Not only did Valencia honor his legacy with a tribute event, but the Orlando Film Festival honored him that following fall with a star in their Walk of Fame, which is out in front of the box office at the plaza. But they also named the prize for the best film by a student, the Ralph R. Clemente Award. So Clemente, Springen, and the festival team understand just how important fostering connections within the film community is to one's own personal story as well as to one's own projects. Now, Clemente and Springen are also very passionate about film and filmmaking. Springen's and the Orlando Film Festival's team's passion for film is evident in many aspects of their festival. Springen is as excited for the filmmakers' growth and success as he is for the festival's growth and success. Under his watch, the festival was the first to coin the phrase "for filmmakers by filmmakers" and has grown to give out almost 40 awards valued at more than $1 million. The enthusiasm and celebration of their craft translates to the filmmakers. If you look on the filmfreeway.com website, there are literally only 5-star reviews for this festival. 5 stars in overall rating, in quality, in value, in communication and hospitality and networking. Just literally 5 stars across the board. And many of the film festival's alumni come back each year. Around 25 to 30% of the festival's attendees are alumni from previous years. Filmmakers and attendees also talk and write about how much fun they have at the festival and about the importance of Springin and the festival's helpful feedback on their projects. And on top of all those examples, it was those filmmakers who got the festival into the Movie Makers magazine's list of top 25 coolest film festivals of 2013. In 2013, the Movie Maker magazine decided to poll their readers for the coolest festival instead of choosing their own list of 25. Over the course of 4 months, they took in more than 15,000 votes and produced a few lists of top 25s, including the top 25 coolest, and Orlando Film Festival is on that list. So, by the filmmakers, for the filmmakers, indeed. In addition to the workshops, location, and leadership of the festival changing over time, the festival has brought in new genres and has also grown to what Springin thinks is the perfect size and number of attendees and films. From the start, the festival accepted full-length feature films and family-friendly shorts. Within 5 years, they had expanded their genres to include documentaries and stand-up comedies. By 2011, the festival was bringing in U.S. and foreign films. In 2015, the festival initiated a screenplay competition, which a potential prize in this category includes a live script read by a cast of SAG actors. The festival also eventually added animated films and experimental shorts. And now the festival accepts 14 different categories of films, including narrative features, shorts, documentaries, TV pilots, animations and music videos, screenwriting, documentary shorts, and they have 2 alumni categories, one for features and one for shorts. The festival receives about 1,000 submissions each year from all over the world and selects an average of 300 films to screen at the festival. And this year's festival includes films from Bangladesh, Japan, Egypt, and Nepal. So numerically and geographically, that is quite the leap from 5 films and a shorts program in 2006. Now, the pandemic did impact festival project numbers. In 2017, they were screening over 400 films, and then during the pandemic season, they screened closer to 250 films in a virtual edition of the festival. As of last year and this year, they're back to screening over 300 films. And like I mentioned, Springin seems pleased with those numbers. Their numbers are great for what he called the biggest little festival. They're little enough that attendees feel attended to, celebrated, and seen, and they're big enough that industry connections impact attendees' project trajectories. Some of those project trajectories, of course, include first look deals with Valencia Motion Pictures, but also much more. Filmmakers who have screened their projects, at the Orlando Film Festival have gone on to get their films on Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and Prime, have been distributed worldwide, and have even won Oscars. So this big little festival has also brought in many big names over the years. Celebrity guests at previous film festivals have included Kevin Smith, Malcolm McDowell, Alison Brie, Michael Rooker, Haley Joel Osment, Milos Forman, Cheryl Hines, Olympia Dukakis, Christopher Fabian, Molly Hagan, John Amos, and many more. One of my favorite stories from that Star-Spangled List is about Cheryl Hines and her directorial debut. Now, I love her from her role as Kristen Bell's mom in the 2017 A Bad Mom's Christmas, which is arguably one of the two best Christmas movies of all time. But she is also a Florida native, and she is a UCF alumna. She's known for her role in the TV show Curb Your Enthusiasm, for which she received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. So, in the early 2000s, she dipped her toes into directing, and she turned her friend Adrienne Shelley's script into a full-length feature film, Serious Moonlight, which starred Meg Ryan. Now, even though she had already shown her film at other festivals like Tribeca in the previous September before she brought it here, she screened Serious Moonlight at our 2009 Orlando Film Festival and said that of all the festivals she had taken her film to, the one that means the most is Orlando. She invited 40 of her friends and family members to come see the showing, and they had quite the celebration at the Orlando Film Festival. Now, although the Orlando Film Festival brings in stories and films from all over the world, the festival embraces sharing Orlando and Central Florida stories and films too. A quick chronological rundown of some Florida films shown at the festival includes 2005's Karaoke King, which tells the fictional tale of one fateful night of some wacky karaoke bar happenings. And that particular film was actually shot entirely in Orlando. Winter Park native James Rapici wrote and directed his film Subprime, which his team also shot that film in Winter Park, and they screened their film in the 2011 Orlando Film Festival. In 2012, the Orlando Film Festival screened Gridiron Girls, a documentary about women from Central Florida playing tackle football in an all-women's league. Now, if you're interested in more about that, you can actually find the documentary and more information on the Orlando Anarchy, who are our Orlando and Central Florida women's tackle football team, on their website at cfanarchy.com. Now, the following year, things really got quacking at the festival. Orlando musician and producer David Schweizer screened his film Bad Chickens that year at the Orlando Film Festival. Not only is it a dark comedy that features chicken puppetry, but Schweizer himself voiced the title character and he wrote the score. Now that was 2013, which was also the first year that the festival was on YouTube. So the chickens definitely made quite a few appearances and some YouTube videos. In 2015, of the 310 films screened, one of the local stories told was the documentary Making History about the brand new Orlando City soccer team. Lopez of Orlando City produced the film, which told the story of how the club came to be and culminated with scenes from their first game. Orlando City owners and the whole team were invited to the festival, and the festival actually had to host the Q&A session for that documentary in the courtyard and had to host other additional screenings because so many people attended the showing. Of course, there have been some Disney features, some Disney moments along the way. Anthony Cortese's The Dreamfinders, a documentary about Disney lovers, screened at the 2016 festival. And 3 years later, he returned with another documentary about Walt, called Walt Disney, Master of Dreamers. The Dreamfinders is an online documentary about Orlando-based Disney fans, folks who have made themselves into YouTube personalities, bloggers, and podcasters to make a living off of their passion for the parks. Cortese also wrote, directed, and produced his piece about Walt, which focused on Walt Disney's contributions to the 1964 and 65 New York World's Fair, the creation of Walt Disney World, and Epcot Imagineers. In 2014, our Performing Arts Center friends from a few blocks over also contributed to the festival. Robin Cowie, a local feature film and television producer, and creative director at the Dr. Phillips Center at the time, produced a series of short films documenting talented performing artists across Central Florida. The series became part of a special film called Arts for Every Life, which screened at the 2014 Orlando Film Festival. The Dr. Phillips Center now has a program by the same name that seeks to empower Central Florida performing artists and organizations to professionalize their talent. And last year, Orlando's own, Celebration's own John Binkowski, who is known for his industrial shorts, his themed entertainment media attractions, and independent films, screened A Christmas Karen at the festival. And the screening, as you can see, was complete with fake snow. Now, there are plenty of other examples of homegrown directors and projects across past festivals, and this year's festival is no different. This year's festival includes about 20 films that center or share Florida stories. So, speaking of Florida stories, the Orange County Regional History Center's mission is actually to serve as the gateway for community engagement, education, and inspiration by preserving and sharing Central Florida's continually unfolding story. After researching the Orlando Film Festival, I'd say that the festival is meeting its own original mission of hosting a film festival that is entirely Orlando's, that takes place entirely downtown, that supports and promotes culture and arts in downtown through the medium of film. But I also really appreciated discovering that they're living out the History Center's mission too. So, the Orlando Film Festival certainly impacts the community of downtown Orlando. Every fall, the festival brings thousands of guests to Orlando. An estimate of their audience attendance is now about 12,000 attendees. In addition to the CMX Plaza Cinema Cafe in Valencia, other sponsors engaged with the festival include the City of Orlando, Stella Artois, Tito's Vodka, Downtown Arts District, Great Graphics Photo Scan, First Unit Production Services, Residence Inn by Marriott, the United Arts of Central Florida, and multiple downtown bars and restaurants. Multiple festival reviews, and even a 2017 podcast talk about how fun the nightly parties and the cocktail hours were, and no doubt that was thanks to the festival organizers and those supporters. Now, I've already shared about the festival's commitment to educational opportunities for their attendees with their concept to completion and pitch to pros workshops, among other programming. So whereas Springen and Hines, UCF, Valencia, Disney, Schweitzer's Bad Chickens, the Dr. Phillips Center, and Binkowski are Florida or Central Florida stories shared at the festival, they are only a small portion of the films and stories shared at the Orlando Film Festival. The festival shares hours and hours of films that tell stories of all kinds from all over the world, screening them here for us in Orlando and our festival attendees to enjoy. When I asked Springen what role he sees the Orlando Film Festival playing in the unfolding story of Central Florida, he said that the festival's role was in bringing in films from all over the world to give Central Florida and Orlando the chance to see these films, which they will never have a chance to see again in some cases. And then some of the films and filmmakers also go on to do great things and to make huge impacts in their own right. So in addition to sharing the values with the Orange County Regional History Center, the Orlando Film Festival story also reflects the history of film and festival industry in Florida. Like the early Florida film studios, the Orlando Film Festival is intimately acquainted with the importance of having a physical space big enough for their project needs and also equipped with the right technology to meet their needs. Like the Casey's Avalon Productions, they're also familiar with the process of waiting for buildings to be built. Thankfully, though, the Orlando Film Festival's luck has turned out much better than Avalon's did. Like early studios and early festivals, the Orlando Film Festival understands the importance of developing positive partnerships with downtown and the Orlando community. Like Venice and Cannes and at Sundance, the local government, businesses, and citizenry play an important part and an important role in supporting and ensuring the success for the festival, and vice versa. And while those festivals then seek to showcase those cities, the talent of independent filmmakers, and the projects of local and international filmmakers. And in doing so, the Orlando Film Festival, like other festivals, shares with the community their passion for the film industry and brings in thousands of people each fall to enjoy the festival as well as the city beautiful. So this year's Orlando Film Festival will take place from October 26th to November 2nd at the CMX Plaza Cinema Cafe. So in just 20 short days, this year's festival will be off and running. Passes are available for purchase through their website, offvirtual.com. You can purchase 1-day or 7-day VIP or even VIP Elite passes. You can also donate to the festival if that's something that you're interested in. And also on their website is this year's lineup of films. There are over 150 short films and tons of features that will be shown. You can see the schedule of screenings, and you can see which screenings will be attended by their filmmakers. So we hope that you check out this year's festival. And from us here at the History Center to our new Orlando Film Festival friends, we wish you a fabulously successful festival this year and in all the rest to come. So for that, I am going to pause for the cause and open us up for any questions before I make our final comments. Are there any questions? Sure. Yes, ma'am. Can you repeat that? The film slams. Is there any relationship between the Orlando Film Festival and the film slams that happen at our other locations like the Enzian? I don't know the answer to that, but do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hi everybody, I'm Dan.
This is Dan Spriggan.
So, I'm the festival executive director. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really kind of cool to see. So the film slams, what ends up happening, we don't participate with film slams, but what happens is a lot of times they make really, really cool films and then submit them. So there's multiple times that we've received films that were shot through the Enzian Film Slam that end up getting submitted to the festival. And then if they're good enough, they make it.
So to repeat the answer for those of you who are watching online and connected here, the answer is no, there's not a direct working relationship. However, oftentimes films that are shown at the slam films, if they're good enough, they then may be submitted to the Orlando Film Festival and then later shown at the Orlando Film Festival. Thank you. All right, well, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you have enjoyed today's program. Supporting our programming is one of the best ways to support the History Center, so we appreciate you being here today. If you want